Yeah, hello and welcome to this quick demo of MochaImport Plus. So once you've installed the tool, you find it here under Window MochaImport Plus. And here it is, and the most exciting feature is probably the Track in Mocha button. With this button, you can send clips from After Effects directly to Mocha, and even the in and out points and masks are transferred. So let's say we want to only track the region from frame 100 to frame 200. So I just set the in and out point of this clip accordingly, select it here and click on Track in Mocha. But that's not all. I also want to define already in After Effects the region that I want to track. So I go to the first frame because this is where I want to start tracking, and then I draw a mask around the region that I want to track. So just draw here a mask, and I set this to none because in After Effects essentially I don't need this mask, so it just defines my tracking area for Mocha. Then I select my layer and click on Track in Mocha. Then Mocha for After Effects opens, and you can see that the range it imported is from frame 100 to 200, so exactly the range that we wanted to track. And also you have here your mask from After Effects. So all you need to do is to select your layer and decide your tracking options. So if you look here, you can say we also want to track perspective, for example, and track forwards. And now Mocha is tracking, and you can see with just a few clicks, all of this is possible. Another great feature is that you can send several masks simultaneously to Mocha to track different parts of your image. So in this case, I have one mask girl and two masks that contain parts of the background wall. So this part here and this part here. With the layer selected, I click on Track in Mocha, and the first thing that happens now is that since in the previous example we already created a project for this clip here, it asks whether we want to open the existing one or create a new one. So this is what we want to do now. So we overwrite the existing project with a new one. This one is to go back to your old one. Okay, and now it asks what it should do with these three masks here. Yeah. And what we want to have is the following. We want the girl to be on a separate layer, but the two parts of the wall to belong to the same layer, such that they effectively just construct or contribute to one track. This means we choose the girl is on layer 1, but this wall 1 and wall 2 mask are both on layer 2. This means they belong to the same track. Also note here in these hints, it says layer 1 is in front of layer 2, that is overlapping parts of them are only tracked on layer 1. This means in these regions where the girl overlaps with the background, only the girl will be tracked. So let's see how this is looking like. Here we are in Mocha, and if we click here, you can see we have now two different layers. Yeah, one for the girl and one containing these two masks of the background. And if you look at the tracking areas, so this is here the selected track mats, you can see that actually these red areas are the tracking areas from the second layer. Yeah, and see that the girl is excluded, so this part is not tracked, and the girl consists of this tracking area. Now we can again set our tracking options, say we want to track this layer with perspective and this one here too. And now if we track, all of these layers are tracked simultaneously. So you get one track for layer 1 and one track for layer 2. MochaImport Plus works with all different versions of Mocha. You can change the version you want to use by clicking here on the settings. This opens a new dialog, and you've seen before we've worked with Mocha for After Effects CS 5.5. If I want instead to work with Mocha Pro, I just select it here. You will find in this selection all versions that you have installed on your machine. Let's try it. We click here on Mocha Pro, and now click on the layer and click on Track in Mocha. This time we do not want to overwrite to create a new one, but want to open the project that we before created in the Mocha version of CS 5.5. Now you see Mocha Pro is opened, and you have the same project now here in Mocha Pro ready for tracking or rotoscoping. One difficulty for many Mocha users is that they are not exactly sure what kind of data they need to export after tracking. We've tracked now here this region and want to export it. And if you go to export, you can see you have different options here. So After Effects corner pin with support for Red Giant Warp and MochaImport, this motion blur variant, and this transform data. If you're not sure what you need for your purpose, MochaImport Plus helps you in a very easy way. In MochaImport Plus, you simply choose first what you want to do, corner pin, move, stabilize, or other things. We're going to look at all of them later in more detail. And once you've chosen a function, MochaImport tells you what kind of data you need for it. So in this case, you can see currently no tracking data is loaded. And what is needed for corner pin is either corner pin supports motion blur data or corner pin only data. You cannot use transform data for corner pin, therefore this one is red. If on the other hand you want to move your layer, you can see transform data becomes green, which means you need to import tracking transform data in order to use this function. Hence, just choose what you want to do here, and then immediately you know what you need to export in Mocha. Now let's take a more detailed look at these different functions here, what you can do with your tracking data. In this example, we want to place the mamoworld logo on this wall using the corner pin function. Once we've chosen here corner pin, we can see that the data we need is either corner pin data that supports motion blur or corner pin only data. We switch to Mocha to export this data. So you can see I already prepared this track here. And what you also need to set for corner pin is if you click here, you have your surface rectangle. This is this blue rectangle here. You can turn it on and off here. And this is exactly the region where your logo should be inserted. Yeah, you can change this also in size here if you like. And now I click on Export Tracking Data and choose one of the two corner pin formats. Click on Save, and now write it to a file. I'm going to overwrite this one here that I've created before. Back in After Effects, I first take the logo that I want to corner pin and drag it into my composition. You can see that it's much too large and also does not fit the composition, but MochaImport will take care of these details automatically. To load the tracking data, I first select again the layer that I tracked and click on Load. Then I choose the corner pin data that I've saved before, and now I have a little import dialog that just confirms that this is actually the layer that I've tracked. All the other details you do not need to bother about as long as you always use the Track in Mocha Data button. Then the tracking data is always correctly interpreted. Okay, so all that is left is now select the layer that we want to corner pin and click on Apply. Finally, you can choose which corner pin you want to use. Instead of the normal corner pin effect, we want to use the CC Power pin that is also included in After Effects and is a little bit more flexible, as you will see in a few seconds. The Red Giant Warp options are only available if you have installed this Red Giant Warp plugin. We choose the CC Power pin and click OK, and you can see now that the logo is nicely pinned on the wall. A nice thing about the CC Power pin is that if you look at the effect here, or here in the effect controls, it has these expansion elements that also allow me to later modify my corner pinning. So for example, we can enlarge it here a bit and maybe make it here also a bit larger like this. Here is our final corner pin result. In addition to the corner pin function, also the move function can be used to move layers according to the tracking data. As you can see, the currently loaded corner pin data is not usable with the move function. Instead, we need to use transform data. Therefore, we go back to our track in Mocha and click on Export Tracking Data, and this time choose Transform Data. We save it to a file that we call Transform Tracking Data. Back in After Effects, we load this file, again with the layer selected, which we tracked. So we click on Load, choose this time the Transform Data, and verify again that the clip that we've tracked is exactly this one here. Click on OK, and you can see now the transform data is loaded. We bring in whatever we want to move. I take again here this logo. Maybe I just scale it down a bit and place it around here. And with this layer selected, I click on Apply. What now happened is that a new null object has been created that this logo is now parented to. This null exactly moves according to the track. And if we preview our motion, we can see that the logo moves with the wall. Also note that it really just moves and is not perspectively pinned at the wall. Yeah? So if you need this perspective pinning, use the corner pin function. If you just want to move your element but do not distort it, then use the move function instead. Another nice thing is that you can easily parent many elements to the same null to move them all simultaneously. I can bring in here, for example, a second logo. Again, scale this down a bit and place it also somewhere here. And you can see now it is not moving, but now I can simply parent it to the null object here. And now also, whoops, I did it the other way around. Undo, parent it to the move null here. And now you can see that it nicely also moves with the track. So if you have several layers that just need to move but do not distort with your track, use the move function. With the stabilize function, you can stabilize shaky footage. And in this case, I've chosen this clip here that, as you can see, is quite shaky. And I already have tracked it in Mocha by just choosing here some tracking area in the middle. And this tracking data I already exported as transform data, and I imported it already here in MochaImport. So for stabilization, I usually recommend transform data, although you can also in certain situations use corner pin. Okay, to apply it, so I have here my footage, I just select the layer and click on Apply. And now you have two options. The first one is to smooth the movement, and the second one is to eliminate the movement completely. I recommend this one only if you have very small amount of movements, and usually the smooth movement is the better option, in particular because it gives you a lot of control of how exactly the stabilization is done. What you have here are a lot of effects or sliders with which you can control the stabilization exactly. Let's look at what the default result now looks like. So you can see that it already looks very smooth and that the picture is moved around here in order to keep it that static. And if you don't like the amount of smoothness, then you can change it simply here. So for the position, rotation, and also the scale, you can separately say how much it should be smoothed. So if we go here down to, let's say, only 11%, you see it's again much more shaky, but still not as shaky as the original footage. Let's go here back to 100%. So compared to that, this is again very smooth. Okay, another nice thing in addition to these smoothness sliders is that you can lock the movement in certain aspects. So you can say, for example, there should no X movement be at all, so no horizontal movement or no vertical movement, or also that there should be no rotation at all. If you look carefully at the horizon here, you will see that it is first like a bit in the diagonal, and then over the time it slowly changes. Yeah, it's like a small rotation. Now the horizon is nicely flat, and here the horizon is not looking good. If you want to get rid of this rotation, you can just say we lock the rotation. So we change lock rotation on, and you see if I switch here, it immediately rotates, and now the horizon keeps as it is, and it is not rotating anymore. The same locking you can also do in X movement, Y movement, and also for the scale. Finally, we of course want to get rid of these black borders here. And to do this, we can simply use this zoom slider to zoom in a bit. Now our borders are all gone. And there's also a second alternative in to get rid of these black borders, and this is that you just duplicate your background layers and shift them over time. But this is a technique I'm going to show you in a bit more detail in a separate tutorial. Among all of these functions here in MochaImport Plus, the stabilized precomp is by far the most powerful one, and you will be surprised how easy it is to use. You can use it with corner pin only corner pin data or with transform data, where I usually prefer corner pin whenever you have some perspective changes going on. In this case, I already have prepared here a track. So I again tracked some part of this wall, and I've also already set the blue surface rectangle here according to the part of the wall that I plan to modify. I export this tracking data as corner pin only, save, and save it to a file, corner pin precomp. Back in After Effects, I select my background layer and click on Load to load the tracking data. Okay, I confirm that this here is the layer that I tracked, and what I do now is I duplicate this layer, and you will see in a second why. Let me make the second copy of it invisible. I select the first one and click on Apply. Just as a side note, in case you have the Red Giant Warp plugin installed, the stabilized precomp function will ask you whether this plugin should be used instead of the normal CC Power Pin. Since I don't have it installed, CC Power Pin has been used by default. What is the function now of this precomp? Well, you have here now this part that is perfectly moving with your background, so it perfectly fits here in your scene. And the nice thing is you can enter this area as a dedicated separate composition. So I right click here on the layer and go to Open Composition. And now you see we have here a second composition that contains exactly this part that you have tracked with your corner pin. Now in this precomp I can do arbitrary modifications. I can, for example, use here this paint tool and start drawing on this layer. So for this I have to switch to the layer panel and start drawing here. Let's write here something like Mocha. Okay, and you can see now this is written here nicely in the precomp onto the wall. And now if we change back to the main composition, you can see that here it is also appearing and nicely animating with the track. If we make our background layer visible, what we get is a perfect animation according to the track. This means whenever you need to modify some parts of your background, whether you want to paint on them, do some color correction, place some additional layers there, or whatever, you can simply change your perspective by creating such a stabilized precomp, and then in the stabilized precomp you can paint on it, modify it in whatever way you want, as if you were basically in Photoshop where nothing is moving. So a very flexible and powerful idea. Whenever you need to modify something that is moving, first create a stabilized precomp, then work and do your modifications in this stabilized setting, And automatically everything you do in the stabilized setting will be transferred back to your original moving clip. The function to create After Effects track points based on the Mocha data is useful whenever, for whatever reason, you need After Effects track points. So let's assume, for example, you are following some tutorial where the guy explaining in the tutorial used the After Effects built-in tracker, but you, for whatever reason, want to use the Mocha tracker instead. So here is how you turn your Mocha data after tracking into After Effects track points. I have already tracked here this area, this corner pin area in Mocha, and have already exported it here via the dialog as corner pin only data. Now I import this by loading. So this is the file I exported before. Click on OK and confirm that this here, so this one is actually the layer that I've tracked. I click on OK and now I select the layer on which the track points should appear. So in this case, it's also this layer, and I hit apply. And now you can see immediately on the layer there appears a motion tracker, which is called Mocha corner pin data, that has 4 corner pin points. And these 4 points move exactly according to the track. In the tracker window that you find under Window Tracker, you can then set, for example, the tracker type to perspective corner pin, and then edit your target and apply the corner pin tracking data as usual. If you do not want to do a corner pin, this means if you want to have just one track point instead of 4 of them, simply export transform data from Mocha instead of corner pin data. Okay, so we already arrived at the end of this tutorial. I hope I could convince you that MochaImport Plus is a really valuable tool whenever you want to track something with Mocha and work in After Effects. If you still need more ideas what you can do with MochaImport Plus, look at mamoworld.com, and there you will find a lot of different tutorials that also make heavy usage of this wonderful tool. Okay, that's it. My name is Matthias, and I hope I see you next time.